Hello and welcome to the Premier Injuries YouTube channel. Today we're doing a very special video. There's been a lot of interest in this, Ben. I'm sure you're looking forward to some of these great questions that people have sent in. Just before we get into the video though, I'd like to remind people to like, share and subscribe to the channel, because obviously we got this great kind of fun content with Ben, but we've got a lot of other good stuff as well, like with Dr. Raj, the fantasy doctor, who can tell you all about Premier League injuries, but we've also got a lot of data analysis that you can look forward to. But yes, today we're doing a special Ben Dinnery Ask Me Anything, and we said literally anything. So there's going to be a few crazy ones in here, Ben. I hope you are ready for it. But before we get into it, how are you doing today, Ben?
Doing very well. A little bit nervous. I have scanned some of the questions. I'm not sure which ones you're going to ask and which ones I may need to avoid.
We're going to try and
but
get
we shall
through.
see. I mean, look, I've been obviously I'm familiar with the Reddit community for a long time. It's not something that I personally dipped into until just now. Although I have appeared on one or two AMAs in the past, and my name sort of keeps on cropping up within the various threads in the Reddit community. So I thought, why not just jump in, get it done? What's the worst that could happen?
Indeed, Ben. I mean, what is the worst that could happen? There's quite a few questions here, so we'll try and get through as many as possible. But the most upvoted one, and I think this is incredibly important, Leighton Baines, I guess it might be the Everton left back, you never know. They've asked,
possibly,
ever stayed in a Cumbrian bungalow? How was it? And somebody has also said, I heard he stayed with 8 other people, meaning the bungalow was at full advertised capacity. I mean, do you want to break up these rumours, or is this true?
I mean, true story, bungalow, 8 people. Fake news, Cumbria, no.
Oh, so
why on earth would you want to be staying in Cumbria?
So the bungalow bit is true with the 8 people. I mean, can you divulge what happened, or was it a little bit too crazy, too non-PG, that we can't talk about it on YouTube?
I mean, I could tell you, Jason, but I may have to kill you if I do. No, we do enjoy. We used to, even just before the pandemic and everything broke up. A couple of lads weekends away, getting the old band back together. So there's normally, say, 8. If the owners of these cottages and bungalows are listening, there was only 8 people in there. There may have been another 3, 4, 5, or even 6 squashed in to the rafters on, may have been on the odd occasion, who knows. But yes, mate, you can't beat a good jolly boys out and relax, let your hair down, have a few beers with the boys, forget about the missus, forget about the kids, forget about fantasy football, and just live the dream for 48 hours.
Yeah, I mean, we can neither confirm nor deny how many people there were, because, you can't help if somebody comes to visit the bungalow, can you? You can't turn people away. That would be rude. But you talked about FPL there. Mead a Hill. I hope that, on the YouTube channel we do a lot of analysis, and I think we crucify a lot of names. So apologies in advance if there's quite a few here. They've asked, hi Ben, appreciate the work you do for the community. I have a couple of questions. The first one being, how do you go about compiling all your injury news? In a typical week, what would the life of Ben look like with regards to reporting injury news? I mean, the first one about your work with injury news is probably of interest, but the life of Ben, I mean, that could be a bit non-PG as well. But yeah, go through that question then.
Yeah, so the life of Ben Dinnery, it's 7 days a week, 350, feels like how many days? 365 days a year. So even outside of a typical competitive season, there are still, European fixtures, international games, as we just had through the break. We're still tracking players through rehab. injury updates, non-competitive friendlies. We've seen, Chelsea travel to the US in recent times at the back end of May when Ruben Loftus-Cheek ruptured his Achilles tendon problem. And so the main bulk of work is really done from, I would say, maybe a Wednesday lunchtime through until maybe a Sunday night. We obviously have the build up to any given game week, so we're working on the principle that we do have more than one game per week. So again, it's you're analysing everything pre-match and you're doing all the post-match analysis through either official channels or otherwise. And I just basically want to know is anything about injuries, niggles, knocks, concerns, question marks, why players may have dropped off, where they disappeared to, and when we can expect them to return. So fundamentally, I am almost like an injury detective in that respect. You need to know fantasy football is just one aspect of the role and why we collect the data. It's a very diverse job. We're used within gambling circles and for betting, but that can stretch out to we work with insurance companies who look to underwrite both individuals and teams within the Premier League. There are also examples of us working with one of the UK's largest sports litigation firms. So maybe players who have felt that they've been mismanaged, misdiagnosed, suing for loss of earnings, loss of bonus, career-ending injuries. And, we've consulted on that and we've had input. Our work just covers a breadth of different areas from mobile tech to products to sports nutrition. You name it, it's very diverse, and I think that's what I really love about the job itself.
And this is the thing as well, you can check out kind of some of the stuff that we do have over at the Premier Injuries website. It is getting an overhaul at the moment, so there'll be a lot of great stuff over there. And of course the YouTube channel as well, we display just some of the great work that we do. The second question from Mad Hill, again, apologies on the name. Likely return for the following players: Virgil van Dijk, Harvey Barnes and Danny Ings. Just a quick one on that, Ben.
Danny Ings back in full training. Always a slight concern with regards to muscle issues. You can never be 100%. I always emphasize and stress the fact that a return to train isn't necessarily a return to play. However, in the case with Danny Ings, as providing there's no setback I know he has trained today, which is Thursday. So as long as there's not a setback, maybe on Friday in the final session, then he should be back. Virgil van Dijk, I've always maintained that it would be highly unlikely that he'd return this season and therefore have any involvement in the Euros, just given the complexities of the injury and the structure in and around that knee. It was always going to be difficult. To give you a bit of an understanding of, we look at ballpark 9 to 10 months really for a return to play. That can easily be extended. Any return before that, and there are lots of examples of players doing so, maybe 6 to 9 months, that's fine, but the chances of re-injury or recurrence increase significantly within that 9 month time frame. So with regards to Jurgen Klopp in Liverpool, which will be his primary focus, he will want Van Dijk in and around that Liverpool squad with a view to maybe getting him right for pre-season. So although we could never rule out a return for the Euros in international football, I would think at this point it's highly unlikely. And third and finally, Harvey Barnes. Again, we talked about a surgical procedure on his knee. Brendan Rodgers talked about, I think he spoke about a bony fragment, I think was coming off. It maybe isn't as bad as it initially sounds. I think it was a little bit of cartilage. It was a little bit of a tidy up in the knee, bit of a clean out. And I think if we look to maybe towards the end of April, maybe the first week in May as a realistic timeline. Again, the concern with long-term injuries is that you can never give a definitive timeline because, there are always knocks and niggles and minor setbacks along the way. That road to recovery is very rarely, smooth and straight.
One campaign has come in with a very important question here. Maybe that is why they created their username there for this one campaign. Can you bring back the old profile picture for us? I mean, is there a deal that we can do here, Ben?
Well, I mean, let me put the question back to you. Is there something that you can do to bring that image back? And if I do recall, and we're going back a good few years here, by the way, I think it was a black and white image of me sort of standing on the harbour with the sea and everything in the background, if in the sunshine. I think that's the one. And that was taken from when I was living out in the Canary Islands. And for some reason, people seem to have loved that. So how about, look, we will put the video live on YouTube. Let's say if we get 50 likes, then yeah, you can have it. You will have that old image back as my in my bio, and yeah, we'll have that on this account. You've got a deal.
I mean, they've even put up the picture for people to see.
Oh, they've actually put the picture as well, have they?
It says God next to it, so just, not pandering too much to your ego. And that actually answers another question from John Mexico. Is that an ocean or wall behind him? Somebody just said yes, so that's both and neither at the same time.
Yeah, it is an image. It is the sea, and if you look hard enough, you may see Lanzarote somewhere in the background, because I was in Fuerteventura. I'm actually looking on this timeline now, having a look at I still can't see the image. But not to worry, that is the one, and yes, it is the sea, and it was about 30 degrees at the time.
So
good, happy days.
So C. Guinness Stout has said, any news on Sonny?
Presumably you mean Hoi Min son.
I guess so. And it could be your son, though, that has made a few appearances in the videos.
he has, yeah. But we'll keep this relevant to fantasy, and then presumably we'll focus on Hoi Min son ahead of game week 30 when Tottenham travel to Newcastle. Obviously, pulled out of I think he's missed the last two with a hamstring related issue, and wasn't involved in the recent international for Korea against Japan, which was a non-competitive game, so we can't read too much into that. What I would say is Tottenham inherently keep their cards very close to their chest. He hasn't been seen on the training pitches. However, I wouldn't read too much into that. We're talking about a snapshot in time, and we all know that you can read far too much into these images, then and spend far too much time trying to decode and understand what's actually happening. What I would say from past experience, Hoi Min son, very good powers of recovery. And, he's a player that is fairly robust. He can tolerate the demands of the game. He plays, lots of minutes. He starts lots of games, and he can cope with the demands of that. And when he has suffered setbacks in the past, he has always returned ahead of schedule. Again, what I would say with regards to hamstring injuries, that first 30 days after recovery, that players are at high risk. So if there are any issues or any slight niggles or concerns, then Jose Mourinho will look to err on the side of caution, because that 1, 2, 3 week injury could easily be a season ender, given the fact that we're now in the beginning of April. So if you wanted a definitive answer, prior to the break, I would have said, yeah, there's a fairly strong chance that Hoi Min son, would be available. But we'll just have to wait and see what Jose says on Friday. But at this minute, I'm cautiously optimistic.
PR4 Teak 9, I guess it's Pratik 9, has asked, hasn't actually asked the question. I think this is a really wholesome comment. They've said, I would like to just appreciate everything that you do for us. You provide us with updates and info about players' injuries and their potential return. All this helps us with FPL. Thank you so much, legend.
Appreciate it.
Yeah,
very kind. Thank you. Appreciate it. Always nice to hear nice feedback, or even the odd constructive criticism or the comments that we get. Look, at the end of the day, if you're producing content and it's appreciated and it's being used and people are, gleaning insights and getting help from that, then I'm happy to keep on producing and happy to keep on churning out the content.
So Speaketh has actually got a question for you there. And again, there's really nice comments there, kind of appreciating your work there, Ben. But Speaketh has asked, anything you'd change about the way FPL handles / displays injuries? Could it be about introducing more types of flagging? How to prove changes are affected? Anything at all, really?
Well, we'll have to be very, very careful here, because the reason I suspect my Twitter timeline and the mail accounts are inherently as busy as they are in terms of providing those injury insights and analysis is because, let's be honest, the FPL is pretty crap. I've just put that out there. They give little or no context. When they initially flag players as being doubts, there is no thought to the underlying problem. They tend just to default on a 75% return. It's very misleading. And if you take that as gospel, then you're going to come a cropper one of these days with that. For me, there needs to be, like I say, a general understanding of the bigger picture. If somebody's getting stretchered off with a knee injury, for example, and their team is playing again in 3 or 4 days' time, then the likelihood is they don't have a 75% return to play. So there needs to be a little bit more context and understanding of the complexities of the actual injuries themselves. But what I would say is, and maybe there are a lot of clubs, managers, coaches, and even certain accounts which are unfairly judged, when you're discussing returns to play around maybe certain players and with clubs. But it's a very nuanced area, and it's often considered there's a lot of dirty data with regards to injuries. And just because a player does return to play and is available doesn't mean they're fit. And just because somebody's omitted from the squad, again, that doesn't mean that player is actually injured. There are a lot of things going and the wider circle that you will never, ever hear about through the mainstream media. So, a lot of information is given out at a specific time in good faith, and even managers to their defense, which is fine. But, there are setbacks that can happen along the way. There are other issues. And like I say, there are other influences. And when we're talking about particularly time-crunched environments around high status, high profile players, then there's a lot of things that can go on and that do go unreported.
I suppose this kind of goes into the next question here from Hold My Life, because he's asking, Ben, what are your thoughts on moving players who have been injured into a team after they've been out? Obviously, it depends on the type of injury, but sorry, my cat is meowing in the background. But there are FPL players that wait for a run of games to make sure that they don't re-injure themselves. What are your thoughts on this? And whilst you answer that, Ben, I'm going to move my cat very quickly.
Yeah, I think you made a really good point with regards to the type of injury and almost, how long a player has been on the sidelines. I touched upon it before. A return to training doesn't necessarily mean a return to play, and a return to play does not mean a return to performance. Now, if we're talking about minor knocks and niggles, maybe something that's kept a player out for potentially just a week or two or a couple of games, then I'm not overly concerned. Again, you want to be considering his role within the team and whether they will be thrust back into that starting 11, what the form of the team have been like in his absence, again, and what the relationship maybe is with the manager. And that will determine whether there'll be risk and sort of thrown back in there. If we're looking at something which is a little bit more medium to long term, a good example this game week for me would be with regards to maybe James Rodriguez. Now, I'm looking at that Everton and Crystal Palace fixture and thinking that's a good one to get on board with Everton assets for me. I do see Palace on a downward trajectory. the question is, do we risk James Rodriguez from the start? And I'm going to take a punt and say yes in this instance, although it's not something that I would necessarily do all of the time. I'm just looking at the performances maybe in his absence. I'm also factoring in maybe the international break and players returning late. The additional recovery days certainly will help Everton, but I know that Rodriguez has been training down at Finch Farm, more or less for the last 2 weeks. So his base levels of fitness are really good. And if he can maybe use this little break that he's had with injury as a way of maybe refreshing himself, and hopefully he can finish the season like he started. So again, it's about context, but medium to long-term injuries. When I'm selecting the team, I want to know players that are, in my own mind, are pretty nailed to start. If I'm confident they're going to be in that starting 11, then the likelihood is I'll be happy to take a punt.
So let's move it on to the next question here. And Ferro Leo, I'm not sure if he's seen your message that you put out on Twitter, and we've discussed this in some videos as well, but he's asked about the fact that you've chosen Rashford as your captain, as your set and forget for this season. Can you explain the reason why really quickly, Ben?
Yeah, this goes back to the beginning of the season. It all really stems from the school meals and the campaign that he done to reinstate those and to get those school meal vouchers out. And that was it. It was just a homage to Rashford. It's a decision. Look, he's done some fantastic work, and it's unbelievable the momentum he's gained in the various projects and the influence he's had on this UK government. Is it a fantasy decision that I regret? On occasions, very much so. But you know what a fantastic guy, and all teams aside and everything like that, purely for what he's done for this country, then he deserves it. Deserves every accolade that he can get.
Now, the next person's name, I'm guessing it's Zizzy. Again, apologies there. But the important question here is, are you Ben Crellin with a moustache? I mean, we've never seen you both in the same room together at the same time. There's a bit of a conspiracy going on here, isn't there?
Well, maybe that's that's a question to answer on another day. We are both from the same neck of the woods, apparently. We are both called Ben, and we are often confused, injuries and fixed guys. So, yeah, look, I'm not going to answer that. It's no comment. No further comment, should I say.
Oh, so really, that's actually going to add more questions with the no comment. Moving it on to a topic that you slightly touched upon there. Off constantly wants to know, how do you deal with the toxicity of FPL Twitter?
Blocking people would be the and look, there are some accounts that probably feel that they're being dealt with rather harshly. I don't engage. You know what? I try to stay middle of the road. I've learned over the time to very rarely offer an opinion, because that opinion is only valid with anybody if it aligns with their own thoughts and feelings. If it isn't, you cop a load of abuse for nothing. So, I try to be quite nice and friendly most of the time. If I detect any kind of and this is where I say accounts may feel like they've been unfairly treated in the past, I will block accounts, sometimes not for things that they've said, but for things that I think they may say down the line. If there's a certain undertone to a question, or I just can't be bothered. Like if I just form this opinion based on sometimes probably nothing, then I feel I'm justified that down the road we're going to have a falling out, and I can't be bothered to have that, so I block you. So for that, to those of people, if you may be blocked on Twitter, but you're accessing here, then I apologise. But that's just the way it is. That's how I deal with it.
Maybe the answer to Quirum Paris as well. They've asked, why am suck at this game? Could that be it is what it is as well? It's just that it's an unfortunate situation. I would say to Quirum Paris, I'm sure you're not as bad as you think you are. But yeah, quick bit of advice there, maybe to lift them up in this time.
Look, yeah, there are a lot, elements of skill, research, knowledge, and experience all comes into play. But let's not forget, sometimes you just don't get the run of the ball, the roll of the dice, and you have a bad run of luck. Wrong captaincy picks, wrong deployment of chips. You're expecting teams to bang, it just doesn't happen. And look, sometimes you can just have one of those seasons where those cumulative weeks mount up and you fall by the wayside. I think that the good thing is you dust yourself down, you get back on the horse and you keep on plugging away. And if it doesn't work out this season, well, we've always got another one around the corner.
A Fardeen 32. They've asked about Son, which you've already covered, but there's the other son, Madison. What update can you give on the Foxes midfielder there?
Really good news with regards to his fitness. He has been training with Leicester throughout the international break. He's now pain free, so he is available and ready to face Manchester City on Saturday. It is Saturday, yes, it is. So if Brendan Rodgers does want to start Madison, he is an option. However, I feel he might just hold him back a little bit, given Leicester's recent performances and the fact that Madison isn't 100% match fit or sharp. So I would expect him in the matchday squad, but maybe Madison to start on the bench and get 20 to 25 minutes in that game against the champions elect.
So let's have a look at... we actually looked this up just before we went live, and it is What in the Pocketoli. They've asked, what do you think of Angel of Death by Slayer? We did listen to this before. We didn't listen to all of it because we came to an abrupt opinion, didn't we, Ben?
Absolutely loved it. I thought it was a fantastic song. And look, the fact that they would write a song about the good self, then what's not to like about that?
Is it true that this was actually the song for your first dance at your wedding?
It's one I played at the birth of my first child. I love it so much. And I named my first child after this record as well.
Oh, well, see, that is brilliant. That is absolutely brilliant. And again, to remind people, Ben's kids have played starring roles in quite a few videos this season. Another question for you, Ben. Back to the FPL here. I like that we're kind of going in and out between FPL and just general...
Flip-flop.
Yeah, flip-flop, Ben-ness, just general Ben-ness. Hi, Ben. What do you think the biggest misconception the FPL community has about injuries? I think this one is actually really useful.
I touched upon it slightly before. I think it's the theory that all managers and all coaches are all out there to deceive everyone when they're talking about potential return dates for players and giving updates on their squad. It's not all smoke and mirrors. There are one or two managers out there who are genuine. There are managers out there who, maybe are a little bit, how can I say, not like I'm being very careful here. I do want to careful with my words here, but let's just be sparse with the truth. But sometimes circumstances are taken out of their hands. And like I say, players can suffer setbacks. Let's look, we've had Roy Hodgson speak today. It's now Thursday. Palace don't play until Monday night. We're expecting them to give updates. They could have a session today. They will have a session on Friday. They'll have a session on Saturday. And they'll even do a little bit of work on Sunday. Then you factor in, COVID and COVID-related absence and illness. So there are so many factors that could go on. So not everybody is out there to do one over on you. Sometimes it's just taking out your control. It's about maybe understanding the manager and, on occasions, giving them the benefit of the doubt.
Now, you are the differential dinnery, and Not Swedish Mac has asked, who is your pick for the best differentials for the remaining fixtures? Do any come to mind here, Ben?
Controversial, and so if you want to check out our 3-part video that myself and Jason have done, Jason done a hell of a lot of work put in the hours during the international break to pull together some statistical analysis and data on those trends that could potentially pan out over those remaining sort of 8 to 9 game weeks. And I'm not one in FPL for letting the heart rule ahead. So this is a decision which I think it is steeped in a lot of, it is backed up by the data. I'm not really sure what his ownership is at the minute, but it's Callum Wilson at Newcastle. I think if Newcastle are to do anything, then it's going to be on, Callum Wilson's got to be at the fore. We spoke about within that data that teams in and around sort of, I think it was 16th, 17th, 18th position have the biggest potential of increasing their points per game return during this run-in based on, when you compare their first 29 game weeks of the season. Now that means, in theory, Newcastle should be well placed, to return some decent games. Now, look, as a Newcastle supporter, I know more just as well as anybody, what's happening there in Newcastle, and we're very fragile in terms of confidence. And if we were to go down against Tottenham early on, then we could see us capitulate. However, I'm not known to be the optimist, but I am fairly confident that we just have enough to stay up. And I think Callum Wilson's going to be a player who, we will look for big things in return. I think you touched upon it yourself. I still think there's a lot of value in that Burnley defence. While I don't see, Burnley scoring many goals, I certainly don't see them giving many away. And I still, in terms of who else, I jump on my differentials nice and early, and who I jump on, you see that the rest follow. I was on Lingard when he was, down at maybe 2%, I think it was. And even now, I think he's still undervalued because West Ham, they will have the belief that they can still break into that top four. At the very least, they will finish, in the European places. David, they're playing for the manager. They've got confidence. They've got momentum. And I still think he's a great buy. Antonio, even as well, if he can stay fit. We know what he done during, Project Restart. He had that fantastic run. So if he can mirror that level of performance, then you could have, he could be a shrewd buy.
And I think this answers your kingdom as well. The question about what club do you support, obviously the magnificent Newcastle, so we don't need to answer that one again. But Changu Mangu has asked, firstly, thanks. Secondly, tell us about you. Where you're from? We know that it is from Newcastle. What's your educational background and day job? Well, you've explained your day job a little bit earlier as well, but maybe your educational background. We were chatting about this off air the other day, and you've had like a really fascinating journey.
Yeah, going back to the day. So, I'm now 43. I left school at 16, went straight into work, went into an apprenticeship. I followed a sort of business administration with a local authority. Really enjoyed that, to be honest. Obviously working in a full-time week, but we were at the time it was day release, and it was then not at HNCs and HNC qualification. I'm talking 20 plus years here, so forgive me if the mind is a little bit foggy. And yeah, so it was business administration for around 3 to 4 years. But then, as you get a little bit older, a little bit wiser, and you want to move off and stand on your own 2 feet, ended up going to university down in Leeds to study engineering. And that was, true story. We had actually went down to do a business degree. So we rolled in to see the tutor. And if anybody's been to Leeds before, they may be familiar. It's Leeds Met of the local landscape. So we went down to see the tutor to finalise anything, and they said, "Oh, look, he's not going to be available until I think it was about 4 o'clock." Now this was first thing. This was next to we were meeting next to the Merrion Centre, and it was about, sort of 10:30-ish. Well, what we're going to do then for the next 5 hours? Oh, we'll go for a few pints. So there was three of us. There was myself and my cousin who were going to go down there and like I said, do business. And another guy who was a friend of ours, and like I say, a true story. As we were driving down to Leeds, he was standing at the bus stop, going to work, and we sort of pulled up in the car, and literally we kidnapped him. Right, we threw him in the car, and where you going? Oh, we'll drop you off at work. You're not going the right way. Straight down the motorway. He ended up ringing work and calling in sick. So this guy, and I'll not mention any names, went back to the university to have this meeting after an absolute skinful. And we had a bit of a chat with the guy, and he was saying, "Oh, what's your qualifications?" I've got 9 GCSEs. I've got a HNC in business administration. We've been doing it for 4 years. So I want to convert that into a business degree. And he went, "Oh no, you can't do that." He says you need an HND. And I said, "Well, an HNC it's the part-time equivalent of doing an HND." I says, we work 4 days and we do the HN. No, you can't. So of course, full of the drink, we just went, right, bollocks, that's it. No, I'm not doing this crap. Who's got availability on the course? And literally just shouted out, is anybody on the course? And one of the tutors went, I'll do engineering. If we've got some places, do you want to do that? That'll do. Signs up on the engineering course, gets out there as quick as he can, back on the drink till last orders. We jumped in the back of the car, which was a yellow Fiesta, on an X-Reg yellow Fiesta. My mate drove home in the pitch black from Leeds, while me and my cousin just sort of flaked out off the drink, having signed up on an engineering course. That didn't really work out that well for me. That was something he used and went out to work for BT in London. I came home, worked hospitality industry, managed a pub, left there beginning of 2000 to work in a print factory, did a couple of years of that. Then I became a careers advisor. So I was a careers advisor for around about 11 years. Towards the end of the time, a lot of the work that we done was subject to funding and bursaries. And it came to the point where at the end of every funding circle, our work said, well, look, just in case it's not renewed, we will put a fund in place to allow you to go and study, to help you to retrain and re-educate. So football was always my passion. And I had suffered quite a serious knee injury back in maybe 1999, 2000-ish. So I decided to go into sports therapy, study sports therapy. And yeah, that sort of led from, eventually I took redundancy to be a careers advisor. I went to work for Physio Room. I'd done some pitch side management, massage, personal training, and fell out of love with that after a couple of years, really the hands-on stuff. And I moved more towards the data and the statistical side of things. And here we are. This is what I've been doing now for, the sort of official start date was the World Cup in 2010. I think it was in South Africa. That was the official handover, but obviously I had been doing it before then. So, I do have a little bit of a medical background. Also a lot of other things that have went on in past life.
Cracking story there, Ben. M.A. Tingle wants to know, what's the best meal you've had in the past week?
Best meal? Oh, I tell you what, I did. We had some eggs and sausages to use. And I did spend the summer working out in Faliraki when Faliraki was good. And there was a local restaurant, and they used to do this big giant Yorkshire pudding, mashed potato, sweet corn, sausages. And just on Sunday, we had all the ingredients, and I just thought, you know what, I want to take myself back to that. literally just like a big sauce, and with a little bit of haggis, brown sauce. Oh God, absolutely to die for. Tremendous. So this week, that is head and shoulders above.
Oyster J, I think, has been a little bit cheeky here with a dig. Or maybe it's just a genuine question here, I don't know. They said, how does it feel being the second most important Ben to the FPL community?
Well, just to be mentioned on the same platform as Krellin, I'm presuming he means Ben Krellin. Well, then that's an honour in itself. I didn't set about being, set out to being popular. I just posted information that I thought may have been interest to everyone, and here we are. So happy days.
Coxter23 has said an update on Region Ben, and also, by the way, you're a legend.
Much appreciated. Thank you. Region was again. This is where we need to understand that players posting updates and post match and this and that. We shouldn't read too much into it. Region came out and he said that the foot injury that he had suffered wasn't serious. He was absolutely fine. Given this 2-week break, the expectation was that he would be back in that Spurs squad. However, the reality, he has only just returned to light training this week. Now, what we don't know the precise nature of that injury. If it's just impact and it is just involvement of maybe some bony bruising and things like that, then there's a good chance he will be involved because it'll be about pain management. If it's anything more sinister than that, then there will be question marks on whether he'll be available in game week 30. I'll stick with my original sort of understanding of the problem. And if I was pushed for an answer, I would say yes, he will be in the squad for Sunday.
Annoying45 has asked, Ben, what do you reckon? Which team do you reckon has managed their injuries best this season? Which team is looking the most robust going into these last few games?
It's hard to ever look past Wolves in terms of squad management, and the data will support that. Last 3 seasons now, if you include this, no team has suffered fewer injuries. They tend to be, and when the players are out, they return inherently sort of quicker than most others. But what people maybe don't realise or fail to understand is a lot of the time it's not about the medical departments and the injuries. First and foremost, you need the players to be able to tolerate the demands of the game. And with no disrespect, if you have a team full of Jack Wilshers, then your injury record rates are going to be through the roof in incidence levels. So you need the players who can, cope with the demands of the game. And then you also need to look at, well, is it fair to compare maybe a team like Burnley to a team like maybe Manchester City or Manchester United, who are involved in European competition? Burnley may be playing 43, 44 competitive games a season. Manchester United or City could play 55. So it's not, they're not like for like comparisons, and not everything is black and white. I mean, what I would say is most clubs are managed really, really well. And if teams are suffering more injuries than others, then it's likely to be, multifactorial. There's going to be several influencing factors as to why that may have happened. And it's not necessarily somebody to blame.
Diamond Rumble has asked, now I didn't know that you talked about this much on Twitter, but they said, why is your cock so huge? Now, talking about this in terms of your collection of chickens that you rear, how do you get these animals so large?
Well, I mean, that's really not for me to say. I mean, if you believe I've got a big cock, then maybe that says more about you than it says about me.
Inkatchu, I hope that is not another butchering of another name. We've answered your first question here. The second question, if you were in charge of the FPL game, what one feature would you introduce or change? Ben, any changes that you'd do?
Maybe one for the purists, and that would be maybe to get rid of the chips. I'm not necessarily a big fan of those. It it takes out that element of, there's a big slice of luck involved in those returns, and it has such a huge impact on so many things. It's almost like the domino effect. You're wondering when to do your wild card, you're planning. Yeah, I mean, I see people spend so much time and effort on looking through these chips and when to deploy them. So for me, like I say, as a bit of a purist, I would maybe get rid of those and maybe just keep it to one wild card per season, and just maybe I'm looking at my background is in terms of the injuries, and looking at those players who you think will be playing more than 30 plus games in high number of minutes.
The real Ollie Hunt has asked, if you were born a few hours earlier, would you have been called Ben Lunchy?
Pass.
Okay. Another question here of Ben, you're a legend. Keep up the great work. I think this is a great one. And again, for people on our YouTube channel, this happens all the time. But Dr. Bongo has asked, are you like us and won't bring any particular players in to your FPL team out of spite where they've done you wrong in FPL? Who is this for you? I mean, this is quite an exhaustive list, isn't it, Ben?
Yeah, I mean, this is pretty exhaustive. And yeah, if you followed, then you will be aware of several players. And they won't necessarily have actually done me any wrong. I just refuse to bring in certain players just because. Patrick Bamford is one who I will not touch with a barge pole. Again, it's nothing personal. I just can't bring myself to it. I did have big issues with Leno at the start of the season. I did plumb for Martinez and Leno and kept getting the wrong combination in goal, and Leno let me down. I think when Villa went to the Emirates, did Villa win 3-0? And I went for Leno over Martinez, and that was it. And he was on the naughty step for a bit. But yeah, I think is it the Bamford one? In the past, it's been the likes of maybe Steven Gerrard.
Pogba's another one that you...
Pogba, yes.
Luke Shaw as well is another one that you throw in there.
Yeah, well, yeah, there is. How am I, Jason? Yeah. And of course, if Sunderland were ever to get back in the Premier League, or Middlesbrough, I know that's highly unlikely. Yeah, they're not coming anywhere near my team.
Well, hopefully you don't have to make that, kind of conundrum come to life. Snoo Chickens 5275. Do you think that the Leeds players were exhausted with the amount of running they did each week? Is that evident from their less goal scoring in the past few game weeks? And is this international break something that can help them become good again? What do you think on that one, Ben?
Good question. I mean, some of the data would suggest, certainly from the Championship, that Leeds suffered a slight downturn in output towards the latter part of the season. Again, we're talking about, just the very demands of playing, certainly in the Championship. There's actually, I think it's 46 games. It's difficult, and given how Marcelo Bielsa not only sets up his team, but in terms of the style he likes to play, and the small number of players group that he actually deals with. You never, or you rarely see heavy rotation. Most changes within that squad are typically enforced. So, it's easy to see why conclusions or assumptions could be drawn on that. But I think their first season in the top flight, the Premier League, crowds will certainly influence maybe performances, but for a lot of these players, the fact that they're playing at the highest level is still a bit of a novelty. And the likes of going to the Old Traffords, the Anfield, the Emirates, the St James's Park, they will want to go out there and still put on a performance. And I don't think it will affect Leeds too much this season, in all honesty. With regards to this international break and almost saying, will it allow players to recharge? The difficulty that we have, and the issue is, a lot of those players now have been away on international break. So just because there's been no domestic football, a lot of those players have been involved in other games. And what seems to have been swept under the carpet is the fact that we've had 3 international games for a lot of countries during this 2-week period, as opposed to 2 that we would inherently have. So they talk about fixture congestion, they talk about managing player loads, and here we have FIFA who's shoehorning 3 games into a 2-week period towards the end of already a congested fixture schedule. It's just ludicrous. So, look, I think, given the intensity, it's not necessarily the distance covered with a lot of players and a lot of teams. It's more the intensity that the players are put through. So those high intensity sprints at sort of 80% plus of their maximum, which is going to be the concern. And there's a lot of that with Leeds. I mean, you seen with Patrick Bamford against Fulham, picked up an early knock in his calf, and he come out, post match. It's fatigue. I think, what the leveler is for Leeds this season, a lot of clubs are in a similar situation. A lot of them are going to be running on empty and running on fumes during this run. And so I don't think the drop-off will be as noticeable. And again, just because they've got that first season bounce in them, it may be more evident down the line, but not for this season.
Drone with Soul has asked about your pastimes. They said, what other games do you play other than FPL? Do you have pastimes, hobbies that you'd like to share, Ben?
I haven't really got much time to do a lot of other things, in all honesty. I do play other platforms, heavily involved in Fan Team, which I personally love, being differential dinnery and almost getting that opportunity to reset every week so you can just forget about the frustrations of a particular game week and refocus on an upcoming round. Really like that. I've been involved in the Fan Tracks platform for a lot of years and find that quite an easy, sort of seamless format to move across into. So in terms of fantasy, that's probably the only sort of 3 games that I do play. And other than that is, look, I've got a young family, 2 young kids. So if it's not work and it's not football related, it's, taking the kids off to here, there and everywhere. And then, try to do a little bit of just keep myself, because it's a fairly sedimentary lifestyle I lead, sitting in a chair most days. I'm up, most mornings between 5 and 5:30 to try and get out a bit of fresh air and do a little bit of training and a little bit of running and or biking or whatever the weather permits, and that's it.
Here's some quick fire questions, Ben. First of all, can you do keepy uppies?
Yes.
Do you prefer apple or pears on your toast?
Neither.
Favourite TV show?
Ooh, if we're talking of all time, Only Fools and Horses.
Favourite breakfast cereal?
Porridge.
How's the season going for you?
Well, under the circumstances.
Okay, and then this one might need some brain power just to think about this. Favourite budget pick in all your time playing FPL?
Oh, Jesus. Budget pick. It's hard to look past Gundogan this season in terms of a budget pick. I don't recall many players at that price point who've returned the types of hauls that he has. So that's certainly one that springs to mind. The Lord, of course, the Lord Lundstrom last season. The Blades Corp had a great campaign, and he was wrongly classified as a defender in the game. but deployed in a midfield role by Chris Wilder. So you are getting lots of clean sheets and bonus points. So again, they're the two I think which, come to mind. But again, for one that does like the odd differential, I'm sure there are one or two more, somewhere in the depths of that mind, but I just can't think of them at this moment in time. But they're the two of recent years.
So the next question's a weird one. It's from IHITK_15. They said, Ben Dinnery ate my hamster. Any truth to that, Ben? We'll move on quickly there. Is that a no answer to that one as well? So we're coming towards the end here, and we tried to go through as many of these as possible. There was lots of ones that were similar as well. I'm going to go on to ACDN QNZ's question. They said, what's the craziest injury story that you've heard about but doubt its validity?
Oof, doubt its validity. I wouldn't necessarily say it was crazy, but I have had, I was reliably informed that an injury hadn't occurred, even though a player was absent from a squad, only for a manager then to come out and categorically state to the world that he had suffered a mysterious setback in the last knockings of the final training session, only for that news to then come out around about 4 to 5 weeks later, after I got absolutely pelted and abused. The story came out 4 to 5 weeks later that indeed I was right. The manager was wrong. But of course, by then, nobody wants to know. You've been blocked, you've been sworn at, you've lost your followers, you're a fraud, you're a fat fraud, you're a fat Jason Statham, and do one off my timeline. It's all too late. So,
oh dear. Well, that's not a good one to end on. I'm going to pick one more because we're getting up to the hour mark here, and we tried to go through as many as possible. I think this one is a good one to end on, Ben. Do you get questions from professional soccer players, although we call them football players, about FPL regarding other professional soccer players? Also, great job in what you do.
Thank you. In short, yes. I get questions from all over the world. So I do have contact within professionals within this country and elsewhere across Europe. Not necessarily questions with regards maybe specific individuals as such, talking about teams, maybe talking about press conferences, maybe just giving a little bit of insight. Players within this country, it's a very tight-knit community. Somebody always knows somebody, so there's no real need to be coming to the likes of me, to find out if the player's been back in training and what have you. But maybe, I am aware of maybe one or two European players that sort of send across the odd direct message. But it's, when you talk about the community, it is a really sort of diverse range of people. Not mind, there's a guy, Damien McGinty, who did interview on the Premier Injuries Instagram channel. He was a cast member on Glee, one of the main cast members. He's somebody that's sort of regularly in contact with. Look, it's a really sort of diverse, range of people, and I think social media and the internet just makes it a small world. So it's, we've appeared on shows across in Africa, North America, South America, all over the world, all because of, what we do on social media and in the stuff that we post and get involved in.
So that is all that we've got time for today here, everybody. That was an hour of AMA, and you did literally ask him anything, and you did answer everything that I put to you, Ben, apart from the obvious two little ones where you said no comment. But yes, Ben, it was great fun, and we'll be hopefully doing quite a few more of these through the season. We might even do a few live ones, so keep your eyes and ears peeled for those through the season. And just to remind everybody, we do quite a lot of content over on the Premier Injuries YouTube channel. We'll put some links to that when this comes out. Obviously, this will be on the YouTube channel for you all to enjoy, but also make sure to check out Dr. Raj. He does fantastic stuff. We do our usual FPL analysis and some other good stuff as well, and there is the Premier Injuries website. But just handing it to you, Ben, have you enjoyed this AMA? And yeah, just to wrap up the rest of the show.
Yeah, look, really enjoyed it, guys. Appreciate that. Thank you, Jason, for so eloquently putting across all of those questions. It's great to finally announce my arrival to the Reddit community. Like I say, I've been in and around on the peripherals of many of those threads in the past, but this is a first official foray into the Reddit community. So long may that continue. So thanks for your questions. Appreciate all the love and the feedback. It's good to know that the work that we are doing is appreciated. It is being used, and and even some people are even benefiting from it. So again, thank you all for that. And yeah, we will see you all again very soon.